attack of capitalism and our Constitution. Please give you a warm welcome, Mr. Mike Lee.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me pretty good? I know Bob's liking this because normally I wear a headset and I'm all over the place up here, so he's got me captive now. We're going to set up, I think they're going to set up, I had a remote down here. Okay. Now, I normally don't do a PowerPoint. I go right into my speech, okay? But there's been a couple of issues, and I'm going to talk to you about those. How many of you, raise your hands, it's okay. How many of you came tonight expecting to hear from Senator Mike Lee from Utah? Thank goodness. Because I can't tell you how many speeches I go to and people walk up afterwards and go, Senator Lee, it's a pleasure. It was great to hear from you. And I go, not that guy. You know, I spent 20 years in the Navy and I did a lot of things, and I'm going to show them to you up here. I get people will come up to me and they'll, because I was stationed in Camp Pendleton for half my career, and they'll introduce me as a retired Marine. No, I'm Navy. Okay? Then I'll get guys who say, well, Mike's a retired fighter pilot. No, I flew hovercraft. They only go 6 feet in the air, okay? We're not doing a lot of dogfighting 6 feet in the air. So, you know, I thought I'd bring some pictures because there's a lot of confusion about what a hovercraft is. And I'm going to talk just briefly about who I am and where I come from and how I got to being here with you tonight speaking. And I promise after the slideshow I'm going to tie all this in. Let me see here if I can get it to switch.
There you go.
There we go. My first ship, since I entered the Navy in 1975, was USS America, CB-66. Now, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm really starting to feel old because recently they made it an offshore reef. Which really makes me, I used to laugh at those guys, talk about that. Now I'm sitting back going, they did what? So, that was my first ship. Now, on that ship, I ended up going to Lebanon twice. You might remember when we had all the trouble in Lebanon, we had to go over and evacuate American citizens. I did that on board the USS America. Let's see, did I go? Well, I'm going all over the place here. Okay, I need to go back. Okay. Go to the next slide. Okay, USS Barber County was my second ship. Kind of a unique looking ship. You can see how close it is to the shore. Now, the inside of that ship is hollow. The bow ramp goes down. That's what those arms are for. It puts a little bridge down on the beach. The ship would actually come in and beach, put an anchor out in the back, and we would take marine vehicles and stuff and run off onto the beach. And that's how we got vehicles ashore. Next slide, please. Then I went and I became a prison guard at the Naval Correctional Center, San Diego. I was licensed by the U.S. Bureau of Prisons in Washington in jail operations and jail management. Now, you might say, not a big deal, they're military guys. Well, let me just tell you. We had a lot of guys in there for murder, armed robbery, child molesting, and let me just reassure you, these are the guys who've been trained to kill people. As a matter of fact, we had one of the top hitmen in the country was a teenage boy from here in Texas. That's how he made his summer money. Next slide, please. USS Anchorage, my third ship. This is an LSD. It's a dock landing ship. Now, the inside of it is also hollow. So what used to happen is we'd flood that well deck, they'd fill ballast tanks, it'd sink down, and we'd bring boats and stuff like that into the back, marine vehicles, and then we would launch them from the back. The whole back of the ship falls or folds open. Then, right before, now I have to tell you again, the last two ships I just showed you also have been decommissioned. So, there goes that age thing again. They started facilitating this one for the hovercraft. Towards the front, you can see the long tube-looking things. I believe I can use this for that. Right here, these are phalanx systems on the side. That's kind of a Gatling gun system, so if the enemy shot a missile at you, it would shoot an incredible amount of rounds at that missile. to stop it from hitting the ship. It would blow it up quite a distance away from the ship. Now, there used to be gun mounts here and gun mounts there, 3-inch 50 gun mounts that shot cannon rounds about this tall. And I used to be a mount captain on that as well. Now, the Navy is very unique. You do a lot of jobs. I don't know about the Army, I know guys that are infantrymen or they work in a motor pool or something. In the Navy, yeah, you have a rating, but you have collateral duties. As a young petty officer, an E5, which is just unheard of. How many Navy guys we have in here? Any? Okay, one guy. God bless you. Thanks for your support. I would stand watch right up here on this bridge as a conning officer, which is not something an enlisted guy would do. I did it as a young E5. I went up, told my captain, I'd really like to learn how to do that. And so I was the guy that put the binoculars around my neck, and I would operate the ship. Con it is what it's called, all over the world. I'm the guy standing there saying, right standing rudder, all I had 2/3, and blah, 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 blah. I worked DSET team in there, which was, I taught people damage control. We had a main space fire on this ship. Now, I'm pointing here at the hull because this is significant for a very important reason. How bad do you think, how dangerous do you think a fire on board ship is? I mean, there's no place to run. Where do you think you carry all that fuel? Right here in the walls. And let me just tell you also that most of these ships carry enough fuel to go around the world 4 to 5 times.
Dang.
How much fuel do you think an aircraft carrier uses? Let me give you an idea. The USS America, we started keeping a tally one time, and we figured out with those 5,000 sailors on there, they spend $1 million a day when they're in port, okay? We would consume about 40,000 pounds of vegetables a month, 20,000 pounds of meat a month, 600,000 cups of coffee a month, and if we were going and had full steam, now we were moving along, not from a dead stop, we averaged 6 inches to the gallon. So don't complain the next time you go to the fuel pump. Next slide, please. Then I became a recruit company commander. You can see this handsome devil right here in the middle. I became a recruit company commander. I would train recruits like a drill instructor in the Marine Corps or something else. One of the other things I did while I was training recruits, because you'd get a company of recruits, you'd take them through training, through boot camp. It's a very difficult thing to do, I can tell you. One of the toughest things that I've done in my naval career was to train recruits. You get a bunch of young men who get off the bus, they're missing home, but these are kids who have goals. Not only do they want something out of life, they want to serve their country. And I can't tell you how amazing these young people are. They don't complain, and let me tell you, my nickname in boot camp was the Terminator. My wife will tell you. I beat them up, and I beat them up bad. Boot camp was not play day. It's not study hall at school. And so these guys, I mean, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. I've closed all the windows in San Diego in the summer, turned the showers on, get as much steam as I could in there, and I'd make them do push-ups till they threw up. And if they got any throw up on my floor, my deck, they were in big trouble. Big trouble. But that's what it takes. Because you know what? We're going to send your kids into combat one day. Now, some people will sit down and say, well, it's the Navy. Let me assure you of something. Long before anybody else gets in harm's way, the Navy is there. Long before. Long before the Army, long before the Air Force, not to insult you guys. The Navy's there. And we send troops ashore. Now, yes, most are not combatants. They are on the ship. Everybody on the ship is a combatant. You have to know something. When you have these kids, they may be cooks. They may be supply petty officers where they're out there just stocking up supplies. They may be a yeoman who does the typing. But let me tell you what happens. They're all trained to fight fires. They're all trained to fight flooding, damage control. I know more about firefighting than any fireman you know. Because the day you enter boot camp, you start firefighting training, and you never stop until you go home at retirement. Well, let me tell you the other thing that happens. That guy stirring grits this morning will sit there and serve grits, and then they may call him away. They'll sound the word for whatever his team is called. He'll muster down on the decks down there. He'll get with the boat crew, and he will put on his tactical gear, get an M16, he'll get in the boat, and he'll go over and board a pirate ship. Did you know that your young sailors are out there fighting pirates? Pirates! As we speak. It's an incredible thing when you think about it. Then they go right back to the ship, and he goes back to baking biscuits and stirring grits again. But they are amazing. They are heroes. They really are. I love that you got everybody to recognize the veterans. I normally do that. But there's somebody you missed. All of you parents who give up your sons and daughters and you let them go. Because that's a difficult thing to do. You give them a wonderful upbringing and then you send them out to serve our country, knowing that one day they're going to go into harm's way in defense of the Constitution of the United States. And that is something you should be proud of. Next slide, please. One of the other things I did while I was training recruits, I was stationed with a unit called Water Survival and Physical Training Unit. And that was several of us as instructors stationed with a small group of SEALs there. We would do the SEAL screening. We would give everybody in the Navy has qualified as a third-class swimmer. So we'd get them up there, and they have to jump off a platform, surface, float for so long, swim the length of the pool and back, which is it's a long Olympic-sized pool, and then they qualify third-class swimmer. If they don't, they have so many tries before they get sent home. Also, what we would do is we would teach survival at sea. Ships sink. And when they sink, it's generally because somebody shot at them. And all that fuel we talked about is out in the water. So you have to abandon the ship. You're in the burning water. Water burns. All that fuel on the surface, you've got burning water. We teach them how to abandon the ship, get into that burning fuel, to swim under it, to be able to surface properly, get a breath of air, go back down, and try swimming to safety again. That's what we would teach them to do. Then, remember, you're in the middle of the ocean, there's no place to go. So we taught them to take things like their shirts and their pants and how to use those for flotation devices. If I had been able to teach just a couple of classes in Katrina, down in New Orleans during Katrina, most of the people who had drowned down there would have never drowned. Because I could have taught them to use something as simple as a pair of blue jeans to float to China and back. Next slide, please. Typically, when you talk about amphibious warfare, you see this. You remember the movie Saving Private Ryan? The boats come in, the ramp goes down, the Marines run off. Well, the enemy knows because of the way that those boats come in and the way the ocean is and the shoreline, we can only make 7% of the world's beaches. So if you remember the movie Saving Private Ryan, you know why, when those men came in, why so many were lost. The enemy knew they were there. Where else are you going to go? It's a tough job. But do you know at Normandy, during Normandy, the Americans got Utah and Omaha Beach. You know how we got those two beaches? Because we volunteered for them. The two most difficult beaches. But that's the American way. That's who we are. That's the American spirit. We don't do anything because it's easy. If we did, we wouldn't be Americans. We'd still be British. We do things because they're hard, because people tell us they're impossible. Next slide, please. You notice that half those guys are knee-deep in water. The troops would come in, they'd run off. They're a sitting target. You remember what it's like to run through the water. It's almost impossible. A lot of times what happened, too, is they'd hit a sandbar. And they think they're ashore. You got to remember, an amphibious landing is the most violent act that one human can do to another. You can talk all the combat you want with SEAL Team, Marine Recon, Green Beret. But let me tell you, I can tell you right now, every one of them will tell you they'll trade an amphibious landing. They'll trade that for what they do anytime. Anytime. Because you're going to have ships sitting out over the horizon 30 miles out, those battleships. And they're shooting projectiles in that are 2,000 pounds. And they're leaving craters 30 feet across. Okay? You've got to time it just right before you hit the beach. That's a wave, it's what it's called. All those boats coming in together is a wave. You've got to time it just right, because if that has a misfire on that ship, guess what happens? They get a misfire, they wait just a second, then they try it again. If it fires and you're already on the beach, you're going to have a bad day. So you have to account for all of that. So you've got planes that are coming over bombing. You've got ships sending in naval gunfire support. You've got the enemy up there, mines in the water, mines on the beach, machine gun nest. It is a violent, violent, violent activity. Next slide, please. This is a U.S. Navy hovercraft, the LCAC-1. You can, right here is me flying LCAC-1 in that window right there. This craft doesn't really take the place of those boats that you saw before. It enhances what they do. This craft actually flies about 6 feet in the air above the air of the ground or the water. Okay? I can put, generally, you're probably wondering the size of it. I can put about 3 18-wheelers side by side. 3 minivans in the front and then another minivan in the back. These propellers are 12 feet in diameter. The air that's coming out of these bow thrusters is coming out roughly 350 miles per hour, 1 million cubic foot per second. So what happens here is we didn't have to stop at the beach like those other boats did. What we could do, we were primarily used for ship-to-shore movement. We hit the beach, come around behind the enemy across the desert in a cloud of dust. It'd scare them to death because they don't know what we are. All you see is a cloud of dust blowing up all this dust. We can't see anything. We'd go out there and fly formations, and I'll show you. Next slide, please. It's me right there in the front flying LCAC-1. You can see all these guys. We generally, before we'd hit the beach, we'd come up to a line abreast instead of a V formation. And at night, we'd fly a lot closer. During the Gulf War, we'd fly so close we could bump. But remember, we were, way back then, it's just after these things were developed, a lot of people didn't understand how to use them. So we're out there flying in mined waters, no lights, no radio, no radar. We had it stuff, but we had to turn it off because we didn't want the enemy to track us. So that's how we went in, and many times we might bump. Next slide. Cockpit, looks like the cockpit out of a C-130, and it has about 3 times as much stuff down below decks. Next slide, please. This is LCAC going into the well deck right there. Now that's very deceptive. Generally, depending on the class of ship, you might have about 3 inches on each side to go in. And remember, you're moving up and down, you're pitching, you're rolling, you're yawing, and so is the ship. Next slide. We would work a lot with Marine Recon and Navy SEAL Team. We'd lower those ramps, bring SEAL Team on. We did a lot of ops with SEAL Team. That was one of our collateral duties. We would do insertions and extractions. We'd either pick them up at a certain point, sitting out in the middle of the ocean, so the ship could stay out there over the horizon in a safe location. We'd take SEAL Team in to do whatever the mission was at hand. And then we would come back and extract them, either on the beach or at a certain rendezvous point, and hopefully it wouldn't be a hot extraction, meaning under fire. Next slide. Now, one of the things we did, we were a very unique group of people. They said it was flying hovercraft, although we're only 6 feet in the air. But what we would do also is we had to be prepared for that craft to get blown out from under us. So we went through SOI, which is a modified School of Infantry at Camp Pendleton, California, is where we were stationed. So we would go up and go through the same weapons training that SEAL Team, the Marines would go, a modified weapons training, so that if we had to hit the beach. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Now, you'll see what we would do now, we had a different purpose. Our purpose was to fly the hovercraft in and get those troops in. Now, if the craft got shot out from under us, we would take up a perimeter. We would hide. And I'll tell you why. We weren't the guys like SEAL Team or Recon. Incredibly trained individuals, I know, because I worked with them a lot doing these ops. We had a different purpose, though. Our job was not to go out there and engage the enemy. They would never contact us on the beach after our craft was shot out from under us and say, go engage the enemy at this point. They're not going to do that. One, we weren't trained that much to do that. Two, our training was defensive. They spent millions of dollars to train us. Millions. They want us to come back, and it takes a year to train one of these guys, and it takes quite a bit of time before you actually get really proficient at flying a hovercraft. So we don't want you taxpayers to have to pay millions more to train new guys and take years to train them. We want those guys to hide, defend themselves at all costs, and then, next slide, they would be extracted as soon as possible. If we were stranded on the beach, we'd have to wait. Sooner or later, we'd get a helicopter or somebody would come in and extract us. Next slide. So you get a general feeling of what the hovercraft is there and how it operates. Now you know, I'm not Senator Mike Lee, and I'm not a SEAL, and I'm not a Marine. Next slide, please. And there you go. Now, I want you to read this. This is real. Blessed are the children, for they shall inherit the national debt. That seems like a joke, doesn't it? This was my daughter Holly's fortune cookie Saturday at a Chinese restaurant. Do you think we're in trouble? This country is in big, big trouble. Next slide. Okay, now we've got that out of the way, we can get to what you came for. Now, the first thing I never tell people normally at this point is, if you don't support the Constitution of the United States, you probably want to leave now, because you're not going to like what I'm going to say from this point forward. If you don't support the Constitution of the United States in its entirety, shame on you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether the Republicans are right or whether the Democrats are right. What I am going to tell you is that anybody who doesn't support the Constitution of the United States is wrong. And they should be ashamed of themselves. But that's where the problem is. We've got Republicans who run as Democrats, Democrats who run as Republicans. Nobody knows who's whom. And why do they do that? They do it because they want to get elected. They don't care what they're going to do for America. They don't care how much damage they're going to do to America. All they care about is, I want to get elected and I want to make some money. Why do you think so many of them are wealthy by the time they leave office? I've been involved in politics for a lot of years. I'm the only guy, so I've been told, unless somebody can prove me wrong, I've been told I'm the only guy in the history of the United States to run for a seat in Congress while on active duty in the military. They told me I couldn't do it. I laughed and said, watch. Show me something that says I can't. They couldn't, I did. I was announced a winner by 26 votes. After 3 weeks of recounting, I lost one by 100 on $4,000. People ask me all the time. The other guy I've heard anywhere from $300,000 to $3 million. I don't know. People ask me, how'd you do that? Well, I did something really unique. I went out and I worked. I stood on the street corner every morning and every evening waving at cars. I knocked on over 30,000 doors myself. I made over 40,000 phone calls myself. I did everything I could to go out and give my message to the public. And you know what? They responded. Because that's what people are wanting. I don't think anybody in the Obama administration knows what they have done now. Now, there were years ago, I'd stand back and I'd say, 5 years ago, I'd look at you and I'd say, I'm a wacko, right-wing nut for saying what I'm saying. Because I thought about that about other people when I heard them say this stuff. Who knew that those guys were right? Who knew? But I'm going to tell you, Obama should have listened to the Japanese. They've awakened the sleeping giant. I go all over speaking on my own dime, talking to everybody that I can. I've had 25,000 people, I've had 5 of the drunkest women you've ever seen beat up on me in a pizza parlor. I didn't care. If they shut up long enough, I'd sit there and talk between them. I didn't care. We're in a bad situation. I'm going to say something a lot of people won't stand up here and say to you. And I'm not some right-wing wacko nut. Just in case you didn't know, Barack Obama is a communist. He is. He's a communist. Everybody in his background pushed him toward communism. His mentors were card-carrying communists. What seated president would put self-confessing communist in his cabinet if he was not a communist sympathizer? He would never do that because it would be political suicide, normally. But he doesn't see it that way because he doesn't care. He's at a point now where second term. He's been reelected. We heard him tell the Russian president that. He can do what he wants now. All he needed was that second term, and that's what he's going after. No one is going to tell me that his goal is not to absolutely collapse America. And who do we have fighting for us? Anybody? You got one good senator here in, we got a couple of people here in Texas. I tell people on a regular basis, and people are hearing me say this, so you might hear this now. I'm seeing it on television, I'm hearing it on the radio, I'm seeing it on Twitter. Texas is America's Alamo. Believe me when I tell you, the entire country is looking for Texas. Texas has 38 electoral votes. What happens if we lose Texas? If we lose Texas, we will never win another national election. Period. We will not win another national election. So we have to save Texas at all costs. We have to save Texas. And how do we do that? It's really a simple thing. He's doing there. Why do you think he's spending all this money on people? Why do you think he's giving out billions of dollars in free cell phones? You know, Mitt Romney was right. Mitt Romney said, a certain group of people that will vote for him no matter what because he gives. So I saw Mitt Romney yesterday on TV, and I supported Mitt. He was my first choice, but he was a nominee, and I said, okay, that's my nominee, that's what I'm going with. I saw Mitt yesterday, and I was so disappointed because he's still doing the political correctness thing. And I said, just stop. The election's over with. You lost. It's okay to say it. You're rich. You're a millionaire. What are you going to do to you, Mitt? Say it. They did support Barack Obama because he gave them everything. We know that. We know that. The more he gave, hey, the better off they were going to be. And they're still looking for the handouts. We need somebody on our side to do something for us. I tell everybody, every group I speak to, you got to start now. Everybody in this room, it's going to take every one of you. If you don't believe it, America is at war. And I'm not talking about Iraq, Afghanistan. I'm talking about right here, fighting for our very survival, fighting for the survival of our Constitution. We're fighting for freedom today. And it's going to take every one of you. People ask me all the time, what can I do? Well, one, get on your computer. Bob does an amazing thing. He gets out there, he puts this stuff online. Many others do. It doesn't matter if you get on Twitter and you just keep pushing things. Talk to everybody you can. I go in the bank, every one of you have been in the bank, and you hear the obnoxious lady behind you. She grabs the 5 people behind you and she starts lying about the Republican Party. She starts lying about the conservatives and telling lies about what the Democratic Party is going to do for you. And typically you do probably what I've done. You turn around, you look at it and you go, oh my gosh. And you walk on up to the teller. I don't do that anymore. I turn around and go, excuse me, that's not right. That's not right. And you know what they do? They run like deer because they don't like to be confronted with the truth. So they run, they lie. That's what we have to do. We have to go to the bank. We have to talk about right. What's right? We go to the hospital, we're sitting in the lobby, we need to talk about what's right. Because they do it every day. They do it every day. I was shocked a couple of days ago. I was in Walmart in Texarkana. And I was looking in the gun cabinet, or actually the ammunition cabinet. And this man looked at me and he kind of chuckled and he says, thank goodness they're almost out of all the ammunition. And I looked at him. And he looked at me and he said, and I'm glad you're all sitting down. He says, I don't know what all the fuss is about. If you listen to those socialists, most of what they say, it makes a lot of sense. Now, how much trouble do you think we're in? And I looked at him, and the first thing I thought was, boy, are you stupid. Wrong guy to say that to. And he finally looked at me and he says, are you from Texas? Are you a Texan? I said, I am now. Got here as quickly as I could. And I'm not the first South Carolinian to get here. Okay? We have a history. Travis. I asked him, are you a Texan? He says, absolutely, I'm a Texan. I said, you don't sound like any Texan I ever met. I don't know what part of Texas you're from. If you're supporting socialism. But this guy is actually going around, he's talking to people about how great socialism is. And I asked him, right off the bat, how long have you been a union member? And he says, how do you know I'm a union member? Really? You have to ask me that? I said, because I know that's where the socialist movement started. In Chicago and New York with the union. They brought socialism into us. Now, I'm not going to bash the union because most of them are just people who are trying to make a living. People who want to provide for their family. They don't know any better. They're blue-collar workers. They look at their kids are looking up saying, Daddy, I need shoes. They're going to go out and they're going to do everything they can to get their daddy and their kids shoes. I understand that. But those union bosses, those people, they're socialist at best. I'm saying communist. They hate America. They hate what America stands for. This guy started talking to me about the union, how great it is. I said, did you go to college? Maybe you don't understand economics. Because, yeah, if you go down as a union and you strike for a 25-cent an hour raise, great. You got a 25-cent an hour raise. Now I'm selling widgets. You work for me? I got to pay all my people making widgets 25 cents an hour or more. Now I got to raise the price of my widgets to my wholesaler. My wholesaler's got to transport them someplace. So they're going to charge more for the transporting. He's going to charge more. So now you have inflation. That's what it does. It creates inflation. Now you, for your 25-cent pay raise that you got per hour, you're in a higher tax bracket, and you've caused inflation to go up, and now you've lost money. You've lost money. I had a guy knock on my door the other day. Answered the door. He comes in, he's got a shirt and tie on, and he walks in and says, I'm a fundraiser for the school. And he starts talking. Well, I started listening to him, and my wife is a mortician. We own Queen City Funeral Home. And he says, I'm doing the fundraising, and blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, well, you don't look like you have any Girl Scout cookies with you. How are you doing the fundraising? Well, then he hands me his card. He's an attorney. He's an attorney that works for a law firm that the school district hired to go around, and ultimately what it would end up doing would be to raise my taxes. I was furious. He had all the information about my building, my taxes, everything. So I went to the school superintendent's office. Funny how things change. I was nervous before when I was a kid getting called into the principal's office. Now I'm standing there reading the riot act to the superintendent. And he says, oh, I'm not trying to raise your taxes. I said, how do you figure? Well, maybe you don't understand, he says, the way we do our taxes. Well, educate me. Well, I don't have a week. Well, humor me. I'm a reasonably smart guy. Humor me. So he went through it. And I said, so you're trying to raise my taxes? No. Yeah, you are. He says, no. Your taxes are down here. The state says they should be here. We want them to meet in the middle someplace. I said, so now are you understanding why the children in Texas schools do so poorly when the superintendent doesn't know that this plus this meeting in the middle means my taxes go up? Now ask me if I have confidence in the school system. And I told him, he says, well, I'm just looking out for the kids in Queen City. I said, no, you're not. No, you're not. Because if you were looking out for the kids in Queen City, let me tell you what you would do. You'd stop running out the minute a business comes in and start beating them over the head with a big tax bill. Because you run out there and you've got somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur. They have an entrepreneurial spirit and they go, I think I'll rent this building and I'll sell whatever in there. And you tell them, okay, good, why don't you do that? Put a little paint on there, a little carpet, and they freak out. No, I can't do that. If I do that, my taxes will go up. You wonder why Texas is blighted? You wonder why all the old buildings look so badly? Nobody wants to do anything? But just get beat over the head with a tax bill the minute they get started. And then I told him, I said, if you would be tax friendly, then let me tell you what will happen. You'll get a guy who will be successful. You'll leave him alone. He will be successful. And you will get a tax base from him for generations. But instead, you beat him over the head with a tax bill, he's not going to be able to make his first year taxes. You're going to run him out of business. So now you've lost all the taxes that you would be getting. And then let me tell you what else you've lost. What else? He's had to pull his kids out of school. So you've lost money per child that he had to take out of the school. So you've lost money all the way around. Wouldn't it be better just to be tax friendly and stop being so greedy? He says, well, we're going to hire some more teachers. I said, you going to build a new school? No. Well, why do you need new teachers? More teachers. Well, we need to hire... No. I know what you're doing. You want to hire more union due paying people. That's what you want to do. Because you know what? I happen to know. I volunteered and substituted all 3 schools in Queen City. So does my wife. You don't have an empty classroom. So you don't have a classroom where you need a teacher. And you don't have full classrooms. And he admitted to that. I said, so why are you telling me you're going to need to hire teachers? Plus, I asked, did you actually Google the law firm that you hired? Mr. Superintendent. No, why would I do that? Well, just by chance, I Googled them, and there were 3 pages of fraud alerts on them, where they send out fraudulent bills to people like you for tolls that you supposedly didn't pay, property. So now here's the thing. They're not going to raise your taxes. Here's what our school board did for us. They go out, they hire this law firm that's got all these fraud alerts on them. They know they're mean as snakes. They go out and they harass you and they try to get your taxes raised. Your taxes get raised, and those poor people where we live, where we go out sometimes to pick up someone who's just died, and they live in nothing more than a storage shed with an air conditioner hanging out the window. They don't have an extra dime to put towards taxes. Not one extra dime. And if you raise their taxes, they're going to go broke. They're going to be homeless. They're going to lose everything. And now the government's going to have to take care of them. Oh, I forgot. That's what you want. You want them to be dependent on the government. And I told him, I said, why would you do this? Why would you do that? You hire that firm that goes out because now they've raised his taxes. He can't pay his taxes. You're going to seize his property now. They get a percentage if they raise your taxes. This law firm gets a percentage.
Wow.
Then, after you can't pay it, and they come in and seize your house and your property and they liquidate it, there's another percentage there that they get a commission. Now, I ask you, does that sound like capitalism to you? That's not capitalism. That's not capitalism. I've got a lot of questions I want answered, and nobody can answer them for me. You know, we take deadbeat dads, and that's what we've got now. All the politicians that are screaming about the deadbeat dads. You should see them when I look at them and go, how about the deadbeat politicians? Those that were sent to do something in Austin and Washington. And you haven't done anything. So if we're going to lock the deadbeat dads up, when are we going to start putting these guys in jail? When are we going to start locking up the guys that violate the Constitution? And there are a lot of them that have been elected in office that have violated the Constitution willfully. They should be locked up and the keys should be thrown away. Because that's the guy we've entrusted. If a cop robs a bank, he gets a lot more time than just